Cardano has only had mainnet smart contracts since September, but we already have a herd of decentralized finance projects launching soon or just launched. We are a huge ecosystem and there's space for many projects, but they can't all be number one in adoption. Today, we'll discuss a few ideas around evaluating the adoption prospects of Cardano DeFi projects. Ready? Let's go. Today, we'll discuss DeFi project adoption prospects. Some additional info on MusliSwap milk staking. It's not quite the information I hope we get today, but it's something. A fix to the SundaeSwap ISO rewards calculator and what that might mean, and a proposed amendment to fix the America Competes Act. Let's just casually discuss a few ideas, not a full framework, but a few ideas for evaluating prospects of future adoption of Cardano projects. First of all, I think there's sort of a threshold timeline issue. Crypto has certainly shown us that we know a lot more about a project after it actually launches. We can only discover certain things about an interface once we can use that interface. Sure, there is a distinction between the protocol and the front end interface, but in the early days, we are only typically getting one front end for each project. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, let's take MusliSwap as an example. There is a certain amount of smart contract code, these are Plutus scripts in the case of Cardano, that the MusliSwap protocol runs on. To interact with those Plutus scripts, we use our wallets with dApp connectors like CC Vault and Nami largely, and connect to the MusliSwap front end that exists currently at the MusliSwap website here. But anyone could build out another front end to interact with the MusliSwap smart contract code if they wanted to in the future. As an aside, we can say that the number of interfaces for a given DeFi protocol is certainly perceived to have some regulatory ramifications, as we discussed last year in the context of Uniswap Labs deciding to take down their own interface for the Uniswap protocol. And that definitely seemed to be a reaction to certain attention from regulators last year. Suffice it to say, we'll probably get to that point in Cardano where we see multiple interfaces for these DeFi protocols. But for now, we typically have one front end for each protocol. As soon as a project launches, we suddenly get to experience the protocol and the front end simultaneously for the first time. People generally immediately have and express kind of loudly their views on the user interface and the user experience as soon as these projects launch. We saw that over the last couple of days. If a project has competent designers, they can usually sort out a lot of the launch feedback they receive from users. Unfortunately, the overall user experience right now is indelibly marked by the severe congestion issues in the wallet mempools and on the blockchain generally. In the long run, we might be able to tell which projects are optimized to perform best under congestion. But right now, the congestion seems to be so severe, there's little in the way of meaningful evaluation that can be done on that front. So we can probably evaluate UI, and we'll see projects launch, and people will find and express shortcomings in the user interface. And, if they have competent designers, the designers can kind of design away those kind of problems. But, in a lot of cases. But overall, the user experience is currently dominated by the congestion issues. Given the overwhelming impact of the congestion issues on the overall user experience, we've probably got to look deeper than just UI and UX. Let's start by looking at social engagement of these projects. You'll remember we looked at this chart over a month ago on December 28th. It shows Twitter followers in thousands, along with the age of the Twitter account in months. And you can see I've updated this since the 28th with recent numbers. And I just kind of go on Twitter and eyeball these. I may have made a mistake, so don't rely on these in any way. This is just sort of for illustration of kind of the order of magnitude of the Twitter followers of some of these projects. And you can see, once again, in blue are the old numbers from December 28th. And in red are the newer numbers. And you can see there's been growth, in all of the projects. They've all increased their Twitter follower count. But once again, SundaeSwap is so much higher than everyone that we kind of have to take SundaeSwap off the chart so we can look more closely at the other projects. And you can see, despite, whatever you might think about the SundaeSwap launch, the SundaeSwap Twitter follower count since December 28th has gone from something like 247.6 thousand followers to 291.8 thousand followers. Once we take SundaeSwap off the chart, you can see in a little bit better detail the growth in Twitter followers of all of these projects. And as you would logically surmise, the two newest projects seem to have experienced the most growth in Wing Riders and in MuesliSwap. If we look at those numbers in terms of percentage growth over this time period since December 28th, it becomes even more pronounced. You can see that Wing Riders has achieved something approaching 600% growth. MuesliSwap is over here at 157% growth. And then everybody else is kind of grouped down here. We see growth between, nearly flat up to something like 35%. And most of the rest of the projects, including Liquid clear over here, a much older Twitter account, they're all kind of grouped in that range in between those numbers, all except for MuesliSwap and Wing Riders. If we take Wing Riders and MuesliSwap off the chart, just like we did with SundaeSwap originally, we can see a little bit more detail in the spread, in the spectrum of Twitter follower growth over the last month. You can see this is all about growth. SundaeSwap is back in there right around in this range. And we've got everything from almost flat growth down here to pretty high numbers. I think we see a peak of 34%, but there's quite a difference in the growth in Twitter followers over the last month. And you could say to yourself, hey, Twitter followers could be bought. This isn't a perfect metric. Granted, I agree with all those things, but it seems like network effect is definitely a relevant thing in crypto generally. And Twitter followers is an easy way to at least get a view into that. Next, we also have to put some thought into timelines for different use cases. If you're up here using a DEX, you're mad if your DEX trade doesn't go through for 72 hours and you have to cancel your trade. But if you're down here using a lending platform, it would be a different level of outrage if you were a borrower who had their collateral liquidated because the transaction to top up their collateral took 72 hours. I'm not saying that it would be impossible for a lending platform to design around these things. I am saying that depending on how a lending platform is set up, their users may be much more sensitive to this type of network congestion. So a lending platform may be forced into a timeline where they can only launch once the congestion is resolved if they don't have some other means to help their borrowers top up their collateral in a timely fashion. If they don't delay and their borrowers do encounter these types of problems, then those among you with more Machiavellian sensibilities may end up having a good time as beneficiaries of those collateral liquidations. The one thing that's sure is that we'll have many versions of all of these different types of use cases by the time the dust clears. We'll have order book DEXs, AMM DEXs, hybrid order book AMMs, and maybe even new totally different models. They'll all have slightly different UIs and provide different user experiences. We'll also come to know the different personalities behind all these products, and we'll all have our favorites. If we're lucky, we'll even be able to distinguish and evaluate the relative utility of the underlying protocols. But the aggregation of all these factors will lead to different adoption levels of each project, with those rankings fluctuating on different timelines. So these are just a few ideas currently bouncing around in my head as to DeFi project adoption. We probably won't really know for quite some time who guessed and bet correctly, but I hope you all do well and that in the end, the whole ecosystem overall flourishes. We talked a lot yesterday about the big MuesliSwap milk staking announcement that was scheduled to happen today on January 31st as I record. And this is what came out. Next big step for Cardano DeFi. MuesliSwap says we are going to roll out a beta version of our decentralized milk pools during February. Be ready to stake milk and earn exciting new tokens. Check out our article. When we go to the article, we find out milk pools are coming to MuesliSwap. We find out this is the second major utility of the MuesliSwap milk token. They let us know milk pools will allow you to become an early token holder of some of the most promising Cardano tokens in the current phase of rapid growth. This presents a unique chance to become involved in what is about to develop into a thriving ecosystem. Dozens of projects have already applied to participate in the milk pools. We're expecting many more to join in the coming weeks. And at some point here, they tell us, yeah, right here. Let's see, milk allows milk holders to put their milk supplies to good use and get their hands on some of the hottest new tokens in the ecosystem ready to be traded on the MuesliSwap DEX. Obviously, we were all probably hoping for a little bit more info from this. I'd love to know where these tokens are coming from. Is this something that these token creators are providing as kind of like a listing fee to get on the DEX? Are these tokens coming out of fees that are paid? I would love it if fees were involved in the milk staking, if somehow milk holders were getting some portion of the fees coming into the DEX. But it's really hard to tell. I mean, it takes me back to the central question. What will be the quality of the tokens that will make up these rewards in the milk staking pools? Is this going to feel more like drip drops, or is it going to feel like something else? But it would be fantastic if the milk tokens had some kind of if there was something going on with fees somehow ending up in the hands of the milk holders. Maybe that's too much to wish for. We'll just have to see what comes of this. It sounds like this is launching in February, so we're probably going to find out pretty soon exactly what these tokens are going to look like. I think most people are probably aware there was a bug in the SundaeSwap ISO rewards calculator originally, and some people who had delegated to a pool sort of just prior to the deadline were being counted. Now they've fixed that. You can go back and see what your new rewards look like. For the people that weren't counted, this went from basically 0 to some much better number. But I think for a lot of people, myself included, the overall rewards, because I was counted, my main wallet was counted in the original rewards calculator. The total amount of rewards per epic has gone down. I mean, fairly significantly. It's not a gigantic chunk, but it's significant. Definitely noticed. I think that makes sense because if a bunch of people weren't counted before, then they wouldn't have been in the bottom of the fraction in the previous calculator for those of us who were counted. So too bad. Would have loved the additional SundaeSwap tokens, but at least now it looks like we have a better estimation of how many tokens we'll actually get, whether we were counted before or not. This was a very welcome tweet from Jake Chervinsky, head of policy at the Blockchain Association. He says an amendment to the America Competes Act will be proposed to restore the due process requirements for designating primary money laundering concerns. If adopted, this means no secrets or surprises, exactly what we asked for. So this is great. We talked, I think was it last week, about how this provision in the America Competes Act would sort of allow the Secretary of the Treasury to just kind of wave her hand and say there were primary money laundering concerns with a wide variety of different things like crypto being traded on exchanges, and with no due process could just kind of ban the trading of Bitcoin, and there wouldn't be the normal longer time period where there'd be a normal rulemaking process where the public could comment on all those things. It would just become this sort of executive function where she waves the magic wand and crypto goes away. So very good work by our larger blockchain sector lobby in Washington, whoever made this happen. Finally, in Cardano metaverse news, if you have been busily creating 3D assets to use in Pavia, you can now look at those in the Pavia compatible asset viewer. Hope everybody is having a great week, and I will talk to you tomorrow.